spot him on over here?
I'm talking to this camera.
You're going to make me go to South Side.
I can throw that. All right, guys.
Can we start?
Yep.
Hello, folks. I'm here at the auto show with the Bronco Wild Fund, and I want to talk about pet safety. Things that you might not think about. We all like to take our pets in the car, and what do? We open up the door, let them jump in, and then take off, right? Not a good idea. I used to be an emergency doctor, and I saw way too many pets that got thrown out the window, or cats that got under the brake and got hurt fatally. So we want to make sure that we keep our pets safe. We're doing a great job with our kids. Now let's do it with our pets too, so we can have fun. We can go camping with them. We can go to the grocery store. We just want to make sure that our pets are safe. So if you look at this vehicle here, what would I use for my dog if I were going to go for a ride? I could put him in the back in a compartment, a crate that is safe, that won't go flying through if we get in an accident. Or I could put him into the back seat and put a seatbelt on him with a harness on him and hook the seatbelt to the harness. That's what I prefer in my dogs. It works really well. If I'm taking the kids along, I'll put them in the back and put them in a crate because it just makes it much easier. But this is one of the things that I always want to talk about. We want to be prepared if we're traveling with our pets for emergencies. We want to have the essential items that they're going to need maybe. And a first aid kit is number one on that. I'm going to walk over here and I want to show you that first aid kit and the kinds of things that you want to make sure you have on hand that you might not think about normally when you're traveling with your pet. So you can get these first aid kits. You can get them online. The SPCA has them for sale. Probably on Amazon. You can find good first aid kits for pets. And in these kits, they have things like eye wash, things you might not think about, things to pull ticks out of if your dog gets a tick, or maybe a bandage to wrap up a wound or to clean the wound. And that's essential because when you have that emergency, even a broken toenail can turn into a nightmare if you can't stop the bleeding. So having a pet first aid kit is one of the most important things I think we should all have in our vehicles if we're traveling with our pets, especially if it's going to be long term. In other words, we're going to be going on a distance. We're going to be taking a trip. Let's have our first aid kit in the vehicle so we have it at all times. Other things that we can do for our pets when we're traveling is bring them water bowls, food bowls, leashes, of course. That first aid kit has to have an extra leash in there just in case. And there are a lot of different bowls you can use. Ford here had a silicone bowl that is very good because it collapses and it can open up into a water bowl or a food bowl. And these are very easy. You even have little clips on them that you can clip them to your belt loop, so you can just walk with your pet and you have a bowl, which is kind of useful. The things that you don't think about when you're traveling with your pets, a cat for instance, people like to have them up on their shoulder, walking around. They're very comfortable. Not a good idea because they'll crawl into corners. They like to crawl into small places, under those pedals, under the brake. That's a nightmare. I think everybody knows. Anytime a pet distracts us when we're driving, becomes a danger not only for us, but for others on the road. So we want to make sure that our pets are safe at all times. I'm going to open this up to questions. I'm sure that there's going to be people online that want to ask questions, and I'm going to field as many as I can. I also want to take you over to the cars that show the ramps. If you have an older dog, to get them in the car, it's not always easy to lift them up. Arthritic dogs don't always want to jump up easily. So there's some really nice ramps, and we're going to demo that for you too.
Dr. Mike, how do I know if my dog or maybe my cat should be in a crate, or a harness? How do I know?
So how do I know whether my dog should be in a harness or a crate or a cat? The cats, I think the crates are the best answer almost always because they like close quarters and it keeps them safe and comfortable. But for the dogs, I have German Shepherd sized dogs and I have a smaller dog, and I prefer the harness on the dog that has a little hook on it that I can hook to the seat belt, and they're safe and it's very, very comfortable. If I have a dog that's anxious in the car, that's moving about all the time and goes from window to window, I'd prefer that dog's in a crate. Just think it's safer for you to have less distraction that way. Great question.
Another question along those lines. if you have a pet that really, you were talking about anxious pets, if you really don't take out driving too much, what do you do? I mean,
So if you have a dog or an animal that's anxious in the car and you have to travel with them, I always say avoid traveling with pets that don't want to travel. But if you're going to be traveling and you have no choice, then speak to your veterinarian. Sometimes we can give them calming agents, sedatives, things that will calm them down for that ride. They don't think like we do. They don't process the travel like we do. So some pets just have a tough time with it. Some pets will get upset stomach when they're in a vehicle. And veterinarians can provide things that will help with that as well if you have to travel with your pet. I like that question. I think that more pets, the more they travel, the more they get used to it. But there are some pets that will never get used to traveling and they just need some assistance, and your veterinarian will certainly help you with that and prescribe something that's right for your individual pet. In generalities, I would say the things that cause a little bit of relaxation are the things that work really well.
Dr. Mike, when we're traveling, can my veterinarian help me get the medication that I need? To know what to take, and also, how do I find out at my destination or along my route where I can get emergency help if I need it?
I'd say I love this question. So if we're traveling with our pet, we're going on, say, a vacation, we're taking our pets along, we want to make sure that we have the veterinary clinics mapped out along the way. And when I say that, maybe the emergency clinics, if you're going state to state, just know along your path where you could stop if you had an emergency. But besides that, you should have medications on hand. If, say, you have a diabetic pet, you want to make sure you have supplies with you. You might want to have them refrigerated in the cooler. And you just want to make sure that you have enough for your trip and maybe some extra. I say the same thing with food. We don't want to change up their food when they're traveling because that can cause GI upset, and nobody wants that when they're in their car. So always make sure that you bring enough of their food. I even recommend bottling up some water from home. It's better to do things like that than it is to just go to the new water supply, because that can upset some dogs and some cats as well. So that's always a good idea. And when you're going camping, I love to camp, and what I don't like to see is dogs running around loose. We have wildlife, skunks, porcupines, accidents that can happen, and it's not a good idea to have that pet uncontrolled. They should always be on a leash. It's a courtesy to your neighbor, and it's a great thing for your pet as well. So I always recommend that when you're camping with your pet. And then prepare just in case there is an emergency, just in case some wildlife comes into the camp area because they smell some of those snacks for your pet. Be prepared for those contingencies as well. The first aid kit's one thing, but you also want to just be alert that when you're in the wild, there is wildlife, and we want to make sure that we're ready for that possibility if they were to come into the area. And best thing to do is keep the food packaged very well so that they don't get into it. You know that they smell as well as dogs can, so just be aware of that as well.
I have a question. What if you're riding with a bigger dog in a smaller car? What's the best alternative for that?
So a bigger dog in a smaller car, that's a tough one, because I have seen people with a Volkswagen-sized car with a Mastiff in the back seat, and I didn't think that was a good idea, because it could overheat very easily. We want to make sure there's enough room. We say this it's not just on the farm you want to have enough room for the animals. It's in our own vehicles as well. We want to make sure that there's enough room for them to be comfortable. We don't want them to overheat. I never recommend leaving a pet in the car unattended, ever. Even if the air conditioner is on, that doesn't ensure that air conditioner works in hot weather. So we want to be certain that we don't leave them alone in the car. And when I see big dogs in small cars, I know sometimes that's the only way you can transport them, but I would make it short distances and try to maybe rent a vehicle if you're going longer distances to accommodate them as well if you're going to take them along. You want them comfortable too. They don't want to be uncomfortable. So I'm going to take you over so we can watch the dogs, little tricks to getting the dogs up into the car if they're older and arthritic, and I think that's important as well. We can't all just pick up our dogs and lift them in. Some of these dogs are too big, and sometimes we're too frail to do that. So there's some great assistance devices for that, and I want to show you, follow me, and I'll show you those devices. Melissa is going to show us with her dog Jasper. They volunteered to show this ramp into their vehicle. And it's a nice way when, like I said, when these dogs are older and they're arthritic, this provides a comfortable walkway with good traction so that they get into the vehicle more easily. And if you don't mind demoing. In and out of the car makes it look very easy. Thank you very much. And my dog wouldn't do that on cue, but her dog did. And then there's other things that we can do. Some dogs can jump on their own. You just want to make sure they have good traction. Something that you can set down on the ground that maybe keeping your vehicle where they're not slipping on the surface when they jump, because that's when a lot of animals get hurt. Jumping in and out of the car, you want to be careful. But these ramps are a wonderful solution for those older pets. And it doesn't take long to train them to go up and down these. It works quite well.
And then we have the barrier here. And all of us going to demonstrate that.
All right. So we're going to...
Come on, Ollie. Come on, Eyes. Come on, let's go, Eyes. Get in here. Come on. Come on, let's go. He's used to jumping in the bag. Come on, Ollie.
He's going in the way back.
Come on. Really?
Stage fright.
Come on, get in here. I know Jasper will do it.
You're making so many people feel so much better.
No? Come on, let's go, Eyes. Come on. Jasper will do it.
That's okay.
Oh, okay.
Well, there are different things that we can use inside the car. There's barriers that can be put up. Some people prefer that. My daughter has 2 labs and 3 children, so she puts her dogs in the back with a big net barrier that's certified for protecting those dogs from flying forward in case of an accident. It protects the dogs and it protects the people in the vehicle, which is very important. They can do those in the back seat to the front seat, and they can also do them if you happen to have a cargo van or some back hub, like in this Bronco. You could put one up in the back of this too, and they make them so they hook to the ceiling all the way down. And it's something you can just shop online, and when you find them, you'll know what it is. Make sure they're certified so that your pet won't go flying through it. I saw a boxer, which was about a 65-pound dog, fly through the front window on a van, and at the end of that story, he lived, which was very fortunate. But he blew right through the front windshield, and he was a projectile. He almost died. And imagine if one of your kids got up in the vehicle and that dog were flying back. We wouldn't want that to happen. You always want to be safe and do the best you can. And sometimes kids do things that we don't expect, and they get out of that car seat. I have 5 children. I know that for a fact. And when the policeman was right there. And but we want to protect them and make sure we have these things in our vehicles. And just be aware of it. We're past the days of letting them ride loose in our cars. And a lot of people like to roll down the window or push the button and roll down the window. And then the dog sticking his head out the window. Not a good idea. It's okay if you're just sitting still. But if you're riding that wind, a lot of these dogs get hit in their eyes. They get conjunctivitis, which is a problem. And some people, they put goggles on their dogs. Okay, protect their eyes. I don't recommend it as a good practice to let your dog stick their head out the window, and I see it all the time. I wish that it wasn't so, but I see it all the time. Like I said, on the emergency side of it, as an emergency veterinarian, we saw problems with that often. So it's something you want to make sure that you don't do, and if you do, protect their eyes. Make sure they have goggles or something to protect their eyes. And if you look up goggles, DOGGLES, you'll see what I'm talking about. There's sport glasses that go around the dogs, and if they'll leave them on, it's fantastic.
Question, Dr. Mike. If you need more information about any of the things that you've talked about, where do you go for the best information?
Yeah, where do you find the best information? There's a lot of websites out there, and which ones can you trust? I would like to point people to the American Veterinary Medical Association. I've been a member of that for almost 37 years, and they have, I can tell you that their information is trusted information, and they have plenty of information about everything animals, not just dogs and cats, everything animals. Also, there's places like the ASPCA and American Veterinary Association. There you go. There's the address. Everybody can see that.
I got it there.
And the ASPCA is another wealth of information for all things pets, and it's trusted information. I would say most veterinarians, if you told them that you were on their website and you found out some information, they would be listening to you.
Just give us your 3 big tips on what we really need to remember right out of the box or right out of the crate.
Yeah, right out of the crate. So I have 3 big tips. I mean, if we're camping, you want to make sure safety first. You want to make sure you have your first aid kit. You want to have supplies. You want to have the leashes, the collars, the food bowls, the water bowls, the medicines if they're necessary. And then you want to have some snacks so they can have some fun. But make sure you close those lids tightly so that we don't invite wildlife into the pet sleeping bag, if you know what I mean. So those are 3 good tips. If you remember that, you're going to have a fun time and hopefully no mishaps. And enjoy your time.
And then can we get it out with the 2 holders?
Yeah.
Let's get Oliver and Jasper over here out for the Dr. Mike. If you want anybody to go in the crate.
Yeah, do we want to show him going in the crate?
No, I think we just really want a shot with you guys together. You sit. Sit, buddy. Sit. That's because they're old.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hi. Hey, when I go, you use this ramp to get up there.
Thank you to the 2 models here. And their lovely owners.